So, I think a couple of people have already made videos about this show. Instead of piling on to the deep dives of why the show is so bad, I'd like to give my take on what went wrong and also my own personal disappointment in this show. Because when it was first announced, I was one of the few people who was actually really excited. The Weeknd, for a very long time, has been one of my favorite artists, and his music videos are something else. The idea of a show by the Weeknd himself where he stars as like a twisted pop star, a satirical version of what he actually is, I thought would work really well considering all of the things that he has made in the past. First of all, just about every single music video that he's put out has been a banger. From fun stuff like False Alarm, which is this really crazy one-shot POV experience with gratuitous violence that's just a really fun music video overall, to music videos for songs from albums like Starboy and Dawn FM, which are really stylized and thematic and representative of ideas that are being perpetuated in those individual albums. The Weeknd as an artist seems to really have an eye for the cinematic, so I thought it made sense that he would eventually turn to something like television if he kept putting out music videos that were essentially little movies. I always perceived his music as becoming way more self-aware over time. A lot of his earlier music is this really unironic, oh, I'm a pop star, I'm a boy kind of music, which, don't get me wrong, a lot of it sounds great, but it felt very shallow. But over time with each album, although these are the same themes being represented within the albums, it becomes more of this like twisted critique of the lifestyle, more of a satirization than a glorification of living like a rock star or whatever. Especially in his last album, Dawn FM, where it really seems like he was leaning into how self-destructive these tendencies had become. And whether that was a critique on his own lifestyle or just a character he was playing in his music videos, I still thought it was interesting and, if nothing else, self-aware. What I'm getting at is the combination of these music videos and the music itself made me really excited for any endeavor he was going to pursue, especially a television show. The original showrunner and director for The Idol was supposed to be Sam Levinson, who's done Euphoria. But he was too busy making season 2 of Euphoria at the time, so they opted for Amy Seimetz. Now, Seimetz, being HBO's and The Weeknd's second choice, was really treated as such. Wow, am I completely out of focus? That's so embarrassing. First video back too. I'm not gonna fix it. Back to Seimetz. With unreasonable time restraints, a much smaller budget than was necessary for a show that was demanding as much as it was, and seemingly a shortage of staff, Seimetz was forced to do what she could and make the best of a situation that was difficult. And many sources from on-set and the people who were in the original cast said that she did a great job with what she was handed. She was given a set of circumstances that should have doomed her, and yet she was able to pull off making a show from start to finish. And they completed production of all but the finale episode, and then Sam Levinson was free again. So they fired her and scrapped the entire thing. What was the justification for completely annihilating months of work and starting from scratch? Well, to quote The Weeknd himself, he was worried that the show was headed too much into a female perspective. So let's talk about Sam Levinson. Euphoria is a notable show, to say the least. There are some aspects of it where it excels beyond what any other show is doing today, especially visually. The cinematography and the color and lighting choices used for this show are some of the best I've ever seen on TV. Like, you can say what you want about it, but if you say that it doesn't look gorgeous, you're just lying. This is alongside a phenomenal cast of actors who are all giving the performances of their lives for this show about high school. Zendaya gives what I think is the most powerful performance she ever has as Rue, playing one of the most accurate depictions of a drug addict that I've ever seen. The writing in this show for Rue is absolutely perfect, and her episode in season 2 that's just all about her and her struggle and her fights with her family and her running away from the police is one of the best things I've seen ever. Unfortunately, Sam Levinson is also a really big fan of shooting himself in the foot by bringing his art down for the sake of projecting his own fantasies onto the screen. Euphoria, especially season 2, is plagued with constant, unnecessary, and gratuitous nudity. We are constantly being barraged by really long and really pointless sex scenes, often between characters who are supposed to be, again, teenagers in high school. Sydney Sweeney said in an interview that sometimes she would tell Sam Levinson Levinson that she didn't think her character needed to be topless in a scene, and he would agree, which really surprised me considering the fact that she's topless for like half of the entire show. Like to the point where it was physically frustrating me every time her boobs were out because I was sick of seeing them. I had originally seen season 1 when I was in high school, and I didn't have as many problems with it then as I did now, but the older I get, the weirder some of this stuff seems to me.
When she was 14 on vacation in Panama City Beach, she met a guy who was like 40.
Hey, you from around here?
Which, in retrospect, seems kind of and weird, but honestly, she was the one in control.
Ew! Sam, what the I'm not gonna get too much into it, but that's one of many examples of what's wrong with the plot. Unfortunately, there's way more that's wrong with behind the scenes what's going on. Barbie, I'm sorry, I don't know her full name and I don't remember her character's name, so I'm just gonna refer to her as Barbie, who had a really messed up arc in season 1 that was supposed to be empowering when it was in fact problematic, talked to Sam Levinson about how uncomfortable she was with all the sexual stuff for season 2. And in response to this, Sam Levinson rewrote her character art for season 2 and made her the single most unlikable character in the entire show and basically just wrote her off.
I can't believe this. You're literally trying to break up with me.
No, I'm trying to help you say what you want to say.
Is this some sort of like manipulation tactic you learned on some fucking incel Reddit forum? God, this is the problem with guys like you.
But I'm sure he's just trying to make good TV, right? It becomes very clear from the very beginning of The Idol that these same problems that exist in Euphoria are going to be even more prevalent in this show. The opening scene is the main character wanting to do a nude photo shoot and them having an argument with the on-set coordinator for all of that, and these producers having this really problematic conversation about, mental illness is hot. And while this could all be explained away as really funny satire, as the show goes on, it just becomes the very thing that it's satirizing. You can't go 5 minutes in this show without unnecessary gratuitous nudity, and there's also all kinds of sex scenes all over the place, some of them really abusive, all of them portrayed as fantasy-like. To go back to when I first heard about this show, I expected this to be a downfall story of The Weeknd's character. That he would be this crazy famous pop star whose own self-destructive lifestyle would be his undoing. And while this technically was the downfall of this famous individual portrayed by The Weeknd, what I was not expecting was for them to say, oh, it was all the person he was abusing's fault. Throughout the whole story, he's intentionally abusive against the main character as a means to push her forward to excel her career and whatnot. And then the big plot twist at the end is that she was really in control all along. She was never the victim of the abuse because she was always pulling the strings. She was a mastermind behind the scenes, really. Which gives the same kind of energy as...
But honestly, she was the one in control.
Of the billion things that were disappointing about this show, nothing was more disappointing to me than The Weeknd saying, I was the victim in this situation.
I'm not leaving.
Then I'll call the cops.
Then I'll keep you hostage.
Then they'll f***ing kill you.
Not before I f***ing kill you first, bitch.
I'm not clutching at straws here, by the way. Sam Levinson did directly say that he is a victim of this story. So, yeah, it just made me really sad to see. I feel like this concept really had so much potential and they just, I don't know, they shot themselves in the foot. I'm not against the topic of sexuality portrayed on television and whatnot. I think I'd be much more forgiving if it clearly had good intentions. The most recent Blade Runner movie is an interesting example of an attempted critique at sexuality while accidentally doing the very thing that they're critiquing. It has female characters that are supposed to represent men capitalizing on the sexualization of women. And while a lot of it is really well done and well written and does a great job of getting his point across, you still have, women being sexualized. Because you can't fake sexualize a woman. It's still the thing being done. But I don't critique that movie as hard because it's very clear that they had good intentions. They weren't trying to objectify the women portrayed in the movie. That's just what happens when you go about it that way. There's different, better ways to go about it. I think BoJack Horseman does a good job of that kind of stuff where they never show SA happening on screen, for example. I also like Seth Rogen's take about if he wants someone to do nudity in a film, he just hires an adult film star rather than trying to get an actor who wants a career in acting to do it. However, it's very clear in shows like The Idol that the intention was not a critique a satirization, or any other means of art. It was very clearly a weird guy projecting his fantasies onto a television show. At the end of the day, none of this matters because y'all made this show infamous because everyone loves to hate watch stuff. One of the people on set said that it just seemed like they were trying to see how much of a reaction they could get. Well, they got one. Even though Sam was the showrunner, The Weeknd was also very involved in this whole process, and this is a show that he is still, actively defending. And everything, especially the whole female perspective thing about Seimetz's version of the show, which I would have loved to see, has honestly made me question everything about what I was perceiving his music to be now. Maybe it's not as self-aware as I thought. Maybe he really just is a motherfucking star boy and nothing more.